Hello, my name is Gary Pope and I am a co-founder of KI. So, as this is an animation business conference, I want to focus on the thing that is the foundation of any good business, a quality product. How do we ensure quality product? Can we? We have to leave something to the magic of the creative process, don't we? Well, yes, we do, but maybe, just maybe, we can help things along a little. If you ever sit on an animation awards judging panel, you'll discover that there are generally no criteria with which to judge quality. It's a very well-informed but subjective process. Defining quality is nebulous, it's amorphous, and it's annoying. So I've spent some time talking to people that really know quality when they see it, and I've tried to pull it all together in 25 minutes or so just for you. There will be things left hanging, so feel free to send in questions afterwards. So, what is quality? And how, as the title suggests, do you ensure you can control it? When you look at what has been achieved in the 115 years since J. Stuart Blackton's Funny Phases, it's easy to see why adults and children right around the world have the most magical memories of and connections with animation. There has to be 1,000 ways to answer this quality question, and we've not got long. So I'm going to tell you how it ends first. And to be honest, it's not that much of a massive spoiler. The answer to how we ensure quality in children's animation is actually quite obvious. You just need to know your audience. No doubt you've heard that 1,000 times before. Obvious, yes. Simple, no. It's wrapped up in all sorts of things like child development, character identification, story, and the production process. The task of any animator, scriptwriter, storyboarder, producer, director, scene painter, production supervisor, or character designer is to elicit an emotional response from their audience, to cast a spell over the viewer through which to momentarily control that viewer's happiness or sadness, anger or joy, or inspiration and frustration. Because I've told you the ending, it'll be no surprise that I'm going to approach this from a very child-centric perspective. Let's just take a step back and think about what happens when a child watches some animated content. Let's assume for a moment that there are no distractions, no little brothers crying, dogs barking, or parents asking you to do your homework. You're sitting in front of a screen, any screen, and you make your selection. You hear stuff and you see stuff. There's a journey that we go on in our minds when we decide to like something or not, and it all begins with the input of these sensorial cues.
I think the colours kind of help because you want to know what's kind of happening, and there's also music going on, and it's very fast. So you're like, oh, what's happening here? What's happening now?
What's seen and heard is interpreted by the individual in a very individual way. This new sensorial input of sound and light is processed in real time against their unique existing frames of reference. What they've seen before, what it reminds them of, the pitch of the sound, the cadence of the cuts, where they are at that moment, and so on. Immediately, our audience will develop a perception of this experience, and they will begin to attend to it. They literally pay attention. If the sound and light are not to their liking, well, you'd have lost the viewer. If, however, they like the perception, they'll attend to it a little more, and they might like to watch an episode or two, and that makes a memory that lives in the mind as a mental representation that can be recalled and, of course, requested at any time. Now, when you hit that, you know you've hit quality. It's what we at KI call the path to connection. It's not what you think is good or important. It's what they think is good and important. And that's why you really need to know your audience.
For me, quality is it not like, if you look at it basically, for me, it's not being rubbish. If you go into detail, it's like, Sophie, stop spinning, you're distracting me. If you go into detail, it's like making you feel good, because if it's making you feel good makes you want to watch it more. If it doesn't make you feel good, you just want to turn it off and leave the room.
But not everyone in the industry is able to look through the lens of the child. And the answer to what is real quality very quickly becomes subjective, based on what we think we know. Here's Dom Gardner of Jetpack.
I think it is very subjective. I think, because we're in the industry, we are obviously, especially in the children's industry, we are not consumers. So we're professionals who base our decisions on our own experiences, or occasionally we will invest in research and we'll actually get somebody to ask the audience, and they'll have a position of what is quality as well. And I think this is kind of unique in kids, because you can speak from your instinct, but at the end of the day, you're not the audience. You rely on the audience, really, ultimately will decide for themselves what they want to watch. And it doesn't, high quality doesn't necessarily mean high popularity.
One show that Dom distributes is Dennis the Menace, a beloved British brand that, as it entered the world of animation, had to be taken great care of. Peculiarly British and with exceptionally high production values, its international success, which has been considerable, makes it a bit of an outlier, for me at least. So I asked Dom why it was successful. What was it that made it travel and pressed the quality button?
When we saw the vision of the producer, which their vision was to take that brand out, certainly in the UK, but also the rest of the world, that was the ambition, and we felt that we would be able to help them, deliver on that brief. Plus, it had a fantastic UK studio who'd done all the animation, Jellyfish. Again, very high production values, very high execution, and I think what in animation terms we were considering, that's quite a high level of excellence that they've gone for. That's appropriate for a 52 11-minute TV series. We're not making a 90-minute theatrical. We're not targeting Pixar, but there's certainly, you want to get as high as you possibly can, but within a realistic budget.
So for Dennis, it was about taking production values as high as possible with a realistic budget. And that certainly landed international accepted quality. Another show that I've been blown away by is The Adventures of Paddington. The styling and visual depth that the animation achieves pulls you right into that world. There's a gentle nod to the original Paddington series, and there's an integrity to the image on the screen that you just know is going to resonate with the children. The way the colour pops and the way the motion of the characters echoes the toys that they play with, all things that contribute to how they perceive the show. Here's BAFTA and Emmy Award-winning writer and producer Adam Redfern, one of the show's very many contributors.
One thing about quality that I want to say about now you brought up the look of Paddington. What impressed me when Adam Shaw at Blue Zoo was talking as writers through the look they were going for and why Nickelodeon loved it. He was you can do quality and you can make the whole world of Adventures of Paddington look amazing. It still has its limits. It still has a budget and a timeline and scope. So it's not like, because it's sometimes tempting, I think, to the uninitiated to go, oh, well, they could probably do anything. I assume they had an extra $5 million on top or whatever, but that's not necessarily the case. Everything has its budget. And what Adam took us through was that the actual main sets are detailed, and then we're given as writers, we have to go, use the house, the family house next door, you got the back garden, you got the park, you got certain key areas, and you have to run your stories around that sandbox, and that's fine, and we have to stick within that. But if you notice things like the streets in Paddington, they go away into perspective, almost like a watercolor background. So it's a really they've obviously had limitation on what they can do, but then they consider it and they apply quality thinking to it.
So necessity became the mother of invention. Quality thinking delivered a quality solution that actually gave the writers and animators a framework to create in. Here's Sinking Ship's head of production, Carla de Jong, who has had her fair share of successes. When she's looking for something of quality, she's willing to take a risk, but a very informed one.
You sometimes see a design that is very aesthetically pleasing, but And I think to myself, oh wow, this looks very appealing. I could see why, the age group it's intended for will probably resonate with something like this, and it looks different. So at that point, I'm looking for, if this is on screen, is a child of this age going to walk past it and is it going to turn their head? Like, are they going to stop and look at that? Or is there something about it that's going to really turn off a child?
So look is important, something unique that maybe hasn't been seen before. But if we think for a moment about the potential visual complexity of Paddington versus outright simplicity of something like, I don't know, Peppa, what is it that these two hugely successful shows share that's not in the approach to the visuals?
Those two examples you give, Paddington and Peppa, absolutely, totally different. Both big successes for preschool, totally different looks. But what's the same between both of them is a coherent world and a coherent look.
A coherent world and a coherent look, joined up thinking, a world that makes sense for the children and a visual world that connects the audience directly to the characters and the story. This got me thinking about how young children particularly convert what they hear in dialogue and sound design into meaning as they correlate the audio with the visuals that they see. So now we're getting to the heart of what really drives quality, the story and the characters. And if we're thinking about heart, we have to be thinking about Love Monster. For those of you that don't know, it's the story of a wonderful monster called Love Monster and all the mistakes he makes and learning he learns trying to be a good friend. For this coming season of Love Monster, the furry guy has been speaking less and yet the narrative is being just as well conveyed. So how have they done that? Here's Jamie Badminton, the creative director of Carrot.
The work that has been done to sort of streamline the moments when he needs to speak is a really exciting. It's focused on new episodes, which we're starting the new year, and I can't wait for everybody to see how the show keeps improving. And I think how it requires the stories to be clearer, and because you're focusing on a certain minimalism in a way. You don't want to put too many ingredients in and throw ingredients at the wall in any show.
Story doesn't exist without characters. And spend 5 minutes talking to children about the characters that they love and you'll quickly notice that children speak of their animated friends in the second and first person all the time. The characters they choose to become friends with are those that they identify with most richly. When we're helping explore our clients' characters, we look to ensure there are at least one of these 4 main identification patterns very obviously baked into each and every character. Nurturing identification, where a child wants to nurture or be nurtured by the character. Reflective identification, where a child sees themselves in the character. Emulatory identification, where a child wants to be like the character. And disidentification, where the child identifies with the character because, well, they probably shouldn't. This deliberate consideration of an audience need in character development helps build the connection and makes the memories that enable that all-important recall and request.
I'm definitely looking at the characters and how I think those characters are going to connect with the audience and the worlds in which they're creating. Does this show create a world that I think kids are going to want to be in? And is this a world that's being created that they're going to want to bring into their world? Are they going to want to play in that world? When a child watches this show with these characters and this story, am I going to hear them yelling out, I'm this one and I'm that one? Are they going to connect in that way? If it's for a younger audience, is a child going to, feel like that character is their friend and want to hold that character?
But it's not just little ones. Here's me and Evelyn, who's 9, talking about one of our favourite shows, How to Train Your Dragon.
He's seen this dragon and he thinks, like, whoa, my dad's gonna be so happy with me if I kill it. And then he also thinks, but it's really innocent. It should get to live, and everyone else just thinks it has killed us. It should die.
And Hiccup doesn't see it that way,
No,
does
he
he?
doesn't see it. He thinks like they only steal our food. They haven't done anything really to us.
And tell me, Evelyn, if you were on the island of Berk, do you think you would be kind of more like Hiccup, or would you be more like the other humans?
I think I'd be more like Hiccup.
You see, she identified with Hiccup. Her values aligned with him in a way that transcends the screen and impacts her emotionally. She saw herself in Hiccup, and that clear reflection helped her connect with him. But the thing is, and I mean this in a loving way, sometimes our industry does not take quite enough time to properly understand children.
Your characters need to be relatable and not just generic or one-dimensional. Always, as writers, we're working hard to punch up the character lines.
So the characters really have to stand for something powerful, but that powerful also has to be accessible. Children will turn the TV over or will simply go do something else if that perception that they've made of this thing in their minds isn't carried through on screen. Sometimes it can be as simple as that perception connecting with an individual passion that a child has. This, particularly in the younger years, will drive them to watch something regardless of the aesthetic, as long as it captures the spirit of that passion. The quality lies in the authenticity and the truth of the subject. Take dinosaurs, for example. As long as a T-Rex has sharp teeth and roars and has 2 claws, definitely not 3 on each hand, then that's all good for my friend William. It could be brightly coloured 2D singing a song, or in a dark and moody CG world rampaging after a bunch of teenagers. It doesn't matter.
I like it because it's got dinosaurs in.
Thank you, William. But even if it has dinosaurs in it, it will still need to hold a narrative. We know that stories light up the various areas of the cortex that are known for social and emotional processing. The more we engage in stories, the easier we find it to empathise and understand other people. And that understanding, if you're little, helps you find your way in the world. And that is an instinct that we all share. Sometimes quality animation does that through dialogue and sometimes through pictures, either or both. Quality animation helps build small viewer understanding of their emotions.
We try more and more in the episodes to actually make him speak as little as possible. He actually now in the upcoming series speaks about 3 or 4 times an episode at the most, just because setting the challenge to ourselves to engage with getting his brain on screen, trying to process what he's going through in that world as he's encountering something that's new to him that he hasn't seen before. That's done by staging to make sure we can clearly see the thing that's going on in his house. The other characters can contribute vocals to that, but he is actually so pure because he's working out, and I think that sort of open-eyed nature, big eyes. In fact, Sarah and Duck and Love Monster characters all have quite big eyes. They are the sort of window there, and I think as long as the noises that are then made are sincere and genuine, like we put so much energy into those voice record sessions to make sure that not even a moment is off beat, so that emotional journey stays very consistent, then I think that plays a big part of drawing people in.
And there's a very good reason that those eyes are so big, but that's for another time. So what's the effect of all this fantastic character work? What's the impact of identification patterns that are embedded in the highest quality of children's content?
The best preschool TV, the highest quality for preschool, I think, is kind of helping the preschooler figure out their world. And so they have to relate to the characters. They have to watch 10 minutes of Paddington or 10 minutes of Go-Jetters or whatever's out there and think, oh, that took me to a different place, but also I recognise a bit of myself there, or something that's happened to me today.
Now, when I think of quality, like end-to-end, no stone unturned, or effort spared quality in animation, I think of Bing Bunny. Since 2013, a single episode of Bing Bunny is the 3rd most watched piece of content on the BBC's iPlayer. Like even more popular than Strictly. And the reason for this is the single-minded focus that Akamar Films has on the most important people in the equation.
And one of the things that has driven us from the very beginning and continues to inform us on a daily basis is a clear understanding of our top priority, which is meeting the needs of our young audience and seeing that what we effectively have with the young audience is a relationship. We don't make films, we don't sell toys, we don't run consumer products networks, we don't hire people. What we do is we have a relationship, and it's a very cherished relationship with young children. We're part of their daily routines. And we have gatekeeper adults who are quite rightly very vigilant about that relationship. So if we respect it, if the next thing we do builds on it, if we're adapting a film into a stage play, or a stage play into an experiential event, or if we're making a small toy of Bing, if it's just a little bit better than their expectation, if the pricing is reasonable, if the way we communicate about it is right, if the way we respond when there's a bump in the road, I've downloaded your app and I've paid the money and it's not working. If we see it as a relationship at the top of the pyramid of complexity, then we end up growing that relationship, deepening it, extending it, and the word of mouth from one usually grown up to another is better.
Now, I don't want to swear at all you lovely, wonderful animators out there, but this is franchise management, and that is what you have to do when you want something that will resonate with children perennially and ultimately make some money. But as Michael said, it's not all about the little ones. For something to really last, it has to be watched by grown-ups too. And there has to be some value for them in the co-viewing experience.
Especially in preschool, the beauty of the double layer of parents watching as well as the younger kids. So you can put in gags or little beats and funny moments that mum and dad will chuckle at. And you always want that co-parenting thing with preschool. But you also need a clear, relatable story at its core that the 5-year-old will also get.
But getting that double layer in and then putting it out across multiple platforms takes a very strong creative and production process. Each of these shows has a cast of millions all working together to make something big people and little people alike can love.
The biggest awareness that's useful to know is that there's a process, and whether you want to become an animator or a writer, there's an iteration and a reiteration process that will make your work better. Highest quality creativity or end product of that is when there's time allowed to reiterate and change it and tweak it and make it better.
There's probably not a process like animation that everything is done one by one from start to finish. You actually get a good chance to put quality in at every stage if you're disciplined about knowing what the responsibility of that stage is at the time. You know, we really look to make sure a story at the start of a process has an emotional drive to it. The character dialogue is doing more than just exposition. But if we get that script right at the start and we pass something that's been made with a full amount of love to the storyboard team, or the storyboarder often, as long as everybody can get immersed in the vision of that story and then plus it, quality just builds from there.
And this is clearly a trait that those that create quality have in common.
One thing is we see the whole process as a daisy chain. And that doesn't mean that language is used every day in the organization. But if you think of it as a daisy chain, a simple daisy chain, you know, are we writing the right, most thoughtfully embedded way of telling this kind of story? Is it a story that really is from a child's POV and meets their needs? Are we performing it as if it's a feature film? Specially composed music for the show, Foley, sound that's done like a feature film, bespoke, post, animation budget, production design. Every single link in that daisy chain has to be thoughtfully addressed, because if any one of them is poor, if any one of these links is broken, you end up with a dramatically compromised creative result.
There was a time when quality was defined by what the commissioner said it was. That's not the case anymore. Yes, it's more complex, and getting kids to find your content is perhaps more difficult than ever, because there's so many games in town now. But this is the time where, if you really know your audience, like really, really, and structure your approach to keep them at the beating heart of every aspect of your business, then you can really cut through. Yep, you're going to need a fair dose of luck, but that was ever so. The judgment of quality now is absolutely in the hands of the children.